Hello friends, welcome back to another week of meals video, or if you are new here, welcome. I'm jumping right into it today and starting with breakfast. I am making a breakfast casserole. This is something that I love to have because my kids really enjoy it and it's very versatile with very little ingredients. It makes a huge portion, so it's something that I can put in my fridge and have throughout the week. We can have quick, easy breakfasts that are already done. If you have guests staying with you, this is also a really great option to have available because a lot of people really like it, and like I said, it's very versatile. I am doing sausage in mine, and that's what I have browning on the stove right now. So while I am cooking that through, I'm going to go ahead and assemble the rest of the casserole, but you can use bacon, you can use veggies, you can use ham. It's very versatile. You can kind of use whatever you'd like. I started out by putting a whole bag of frozen hash browns into this casserole dish, and then I'm going to do 12 eggs. You don't have to do this much. I actually often use about 3/4 of a bag, and I want to say like 9 or 10 eggs, but I wanted a bigger casserole this week, so I went ahead and I just did all of it at once to have a bigger casserole. Once you have all the eggs in, I use about a half a cup to a cup of milk depending on how many eggs I'm going to use, and then I'll put salt and pepper in and I'll give it a really good mix to kind of combine all the ingredients. And then once the sausage is done, I'll put that in and about a cup of cheese. Again, very versatile. You can eyeball it. If you don't want to add the cheese, you don't have to, or you could even add it on the top. The sausage is now done, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in, give it a good stir, and then add in the cheese before I bake it in the oven. It kind of depends on your oven, but it's about 30 to 40 minutes at about 350 degrees. I usually will also put a knife into the center to make sure that the eggs are completely set and make sure that it's completely cooked through, so that is a good way of telling exactly when it's done. While I'm finishing putting the casserole together and getting it ready for the oven, I just wanted to point out that if I at all sound weird or the audio is at all weird, I'm testing out a new editing software, and my old mic did not actually work with it, or I'm not sure how to set it up with it, so I'm using my 15-year-old son's mic for his video games and stuff, so if it all sounds weird, that is why. But thank you for bearing with me, and I'm hoping to iron out all the wrinkles for my next video. And here is how the breakfast casserole turned out. This is such a great meal. You can put it in the freezer. You can have it for the week in the fridge. My kids like to have it throughout the week, and they like to add a dash of hot sauce in it too. For our next recipe, I'm going to be making lunch. I usually make this recipe for dinner, however, my kids requested it for lunch. So I'm going to be doing, I think they're a copycat version of a Taco Bell burrito. I'm not sure, I'm looking at the recipe now and I thought that that's what it said, but it doesn't say it here. So anyway, I think it is. I've never had the one that they're referring to. I think it's like a cheesy beef burrito is what I thought it was. So I don't know how close it tastes. However, it is an extremely good recipe. Like burritos that I usually make, I'm now making these because it is really, really good. It is a very good substitute for Taco Bell. So anyway, I'm grounding a pound of ground beef in a skillet now, and then I believe it has, let me check, Yes, so, and then I'm going to dice up a small onion, half of a small onion. I'll chop it up really small and I'm gonna put it in while this is cooking. And then we're going to add in some seasonings and make burritos. And then after this, I'll make a copycat version of the Chick-fil-A kale salad. So I don't know if everybody else has had that been going around their social media, but it has been all over mine, probably because I'm trying to eat healthier. So I'm looking at healthier recipes, and that is one that keeps popping up. So we're going to make that for my lunch, but first we're going to make the kids' lunch, which is, again, another copycat version, I believe, of a Taco Bell burrito. While I have the meat started, I'm going to dice up an onion, and it said half of a small onion. I only have red onion this week, so it's funny because last week I think it was, I didn't have red, I only had white, so I was like substituting the red or the white for the red, and this week is the opposite. So anyway, I'm going to do half of a red onion. I'm going to cut them up really small, and then I'll put it in with the meat. Now this seems like a lot of onions, so I'm not actually going to add all of it. I'm just going to add some. I'm going to let this cook down a little bit before I drain the grease, and then add in like the seasonings and stuff like that. I have the ground beef and the onions cooked through, and I drained the grease. So now I'm going to add in 1 package of taco seasoning. It said about 3 tablespoons. I don't have a whole package, which it's fine. I don't feel like missing out a little bit is gonna do anything. About 2 tablespoons of chili powder, which is basically what I have, a little less actually. It says half a teaspoon of salt, but I feel like this is kind of a lot of salt, so I'm going to not do that. Let's see what else. Oh, and 1 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. I added that last time I made these, and it was a little too spicy for my kids, so I'm not going to add it this time. I wouldn't even add 1 teaspoon. I feel like I added half a teaspoon last time, and it was just, it was fine, but it was a little too spicy for my kids. So, which they actually really like spiciness, so kind of says a lot. But I'm gonna stir that in, and then add in about a cup of water. And I'm gonna put it on the burner and let it kind of reduce a little bit to simmer. Now it said to use 6 tablespoons of tomato paste. I don't have that, so I'm going to use a little bit of leftover enchilada sauce, and I've actually done that every time because I'm really bad at buying tomato paste apparently and I never have it on hand. So, and I always have enchilada sauce because my kids love enchiladas, so I have always added that, and it has always been delicious. So if you don't have that, you can substitute it for tomato sauce. I'm sure it might, depending on what it has in it, it might be a little bit more Italian than what you're looking for, but enchilada sauce works perfectly too. So I'm going to let this simmer a little bit on the stove before I add in the cheese. While this is cooking down, I'm going to warm up a can of refried beans. You can also use black beans or anything like that. The original recipe says refried, and that is what I have on hand, and it kind of smooths better in the burrito. So I do suggest using refried beans, but if you don't have that and you have something else, feel free to try the other stuff too. The mixture is cooked down a little bit more than halfway at this point, so I'm going to add in the cheese. It says about 8 ounces. I have no idea how much I have, but I'm going to use that amount of a 32-ounce bag. I mean, cheese is cheese. I don't really know who measures cheese. I don't. So there's that. Measure with your heart. That looks about right. And then I'm going to stir it in to combine it, and then we'll layer it in the burrito once it's all mixed together and melted. Here's the mixture all mixed together and melty. This is what it should look like. We're going to go ahead and layer that now in the burrito with the refried beans. Okay, let's assemble these burritos. Last time I used the carb balance ones, but this is for my kids, and I don't think I really have very many of those. So I'm going to just use normal flour tortillas. That one's a little wonky. You put just a little dollop of each, basically, because you want to be able to roll them up. And these are kind of, what size are these? These are medium tortillas, so if you're wanting bigger ones, which I think that's what they probably use at Taco Bell, you're going to want to get the bigger ones. And then a dollop of the meat and cheese mixture. Last time I made these, I put lettuce and a little bit of like raw onion on a couple of them. You could put jalapenos. You can kind of do whatever you want with these. They were really good with the lettuce and onion added to them. But again, this is just a quick, easy lunch. So I'm gonna roll them up, and that is it. These burritos reheat very well, so if you're wanting to freeze them, if you're doing any meal prep or anything like that for the freezer, these freeze very well and then heat up really well afterwards. So that's always an option too, and that's actually what I ended up doing with our leftovers. I just put them into a large gallon-sized freezer bag. That way my kids can kind of pull them out whenever they're wanting one and warm it up in the microwave. I cut them open so you could see how they look on the inside. Very cheesy and very filling. Okay, now that I have the kids' lunch done, I'm going to make my lunch, and I'm going to do the, I think it's viral, at least it's all over my social media, the copycat version of the Chick-fil-A kale salad. I'm going to use the copycat version of the Popeyes chicken that I always make on my channel. I grilled that earlier this week, so I'm just gonna cut up some of that to put into it. And then I'm going to do the dressing and the kale salad. There's honestly not very many ingredients that go in it. And I'm making, it seems like a big portion. I've made this before, but only a couple of times, so it's still kind of new to me, and I'm still making adjustments for my taste. But anyway, so I'm gonna make that for my lunch, and then I'll probably put a little aside. I think it will hold over a little, or I think it will hold over okay because it's kale. So anyway, you're going to put in, it says just one bunch of kale. I don't know what that means. A bunch to me is like a handful, so that's what I'm gonna do. And then it says 2 cups of cabbage. And it said green cabbage. I'm sure if you get the mixture, which I usually do, I'm sure that's fine. I like the mixture one where it has like the purple and everything in it. And I think carrots too, but anyway, my Walmart didn't have any. So it says 2 cups. I'm just gonna eyeball it. Okay. And then is the rest just, oh. And then it says toasted almonds. I don't have that, and I prefer sunflower seeds, so I'm going to use sunflower seeds. It says half a cup. So, half a cup. And now I think the rest is just, yeah, the rest is just the dressing, so aside from the chicken. So I'm gonna put that aside, and now we're going to make the dressing. You will need olive oil, Dijon mustard, you'll need apple cider vinegar, let's see, garlic and pepper. Now it says just black pepper, but they say freshly ground. I don't think that ever matters, so do whatever you want. Salt. And it said honey or maple syrup. I'm going to use honey, and it does not say garlic, but I'm going to do a little extra of that. I felt like last time it was lacking just slightly, so I'm gonna add some of this and hope that that kind of helps. And then it says lemon juice. I don't think I have lemons, go figure. So if I have a lime, I'll add that. If not, I'm just not gonna do it. I feel like the dressing was almost like a honey mustard vinaigrette last time I tried it, and I make a really good honey mustard salad dressing, so I think I'm just gonna, for the most part, try just to do my version, but also do some of theirs. So anyway, I'm going to quickly put all of this together, and if you're looking for the recipe, I'll have it in the description box below. The blackened chicken that I'm using here can sometimes be a little spicy, so if you're using this recipe, I would probably adjust the cayenne or not add it at all. You can also use just plain grilled chicken. You can use really any kind of chicken you want. I think a lot of people online I'm seeing are using that bear chicken that I want to say it's at Costco. I'm not really sure if it's just everywhere. I think it's just a brand, but it's a healthier version brand, and it might be lightly breaded too. This salad ended up being even better than the other times I've had it, so whatever adjustments I made ended up really working out, and I didn't end up adding a lemon or a lime because I didn't have any, but this is how it turned out. It was really delicious. My next recipe is something that I end up making all summer long. It is something that I get a lot of requests for, and a lot of people end up asking for this recipe, and it's so super simple, but I figured I would go ahead and share it because the weather is starting to warm up and summer will be here before we know it. So I went ahead and I'm starting to make it for this season. This doesn't really have a name. I kind of call it just orange chicken. It is not like the Asian version at all. I put a bunch of chicken legs into a gallon-sized Ziploc bag, and then I juice a bunch of oranges into it. I'll put paprika, salt, pepper, and garlic in it, and then sometimes you can put some other citrus, but I felt like oranges usually work the best. They have the best flavor for this. And then I'll let it marinate for several hours in my fridge before we put it on the grill. This is another one of those recipes that I have made for so long and so often that I don't really measure any of the ingredients. I kind of just measure with my heart, so you could definitely do the same. If you want more garlic, you could add more garlic. You can also, instead of doing garlic powder, you could do like minced garlic. But I definitely just measure with my heart. I did in that about 4 oranges, and I think I also did 1 lime. Now, I always make in my videos a cucumber and tomato and onion salad, and I don't think I've really shown this one. This is one I do all summer long because we always have an abundance of cucumbers and tomatoes in our garden, and I randomly came across this recipe, I want to say like 4 years ago online. It's so simple, but it's delicious. So this is one of my favorite things to have during the summer, and it goes perfect with this chicken, and I'm just going to do a baked potato. So I'm slicing up cucumbers, and I showed how they're very, very thin. I slice them all very thin, and then I'll slice up about 3 tomatoes. You could do, just again measure with your heart, but I believe 3 small tomatoes, and then 1 entire cucumber, very thinly sliced, the tiniest amount of salt, and then about 2 tablespoons of mayo, and the smallest dash of milk. You mix it together and put it in your fridge until you're ready to eat. It is the smallest amount of stuff, but it packs so much flavor, I swear. It's one of my favorite things to have. At this point, my husband was now home from work, so he's getting the chicken going on the grill. You can use, instead of legs, you can do really any kind of meat. We just always usually do legs or thighs for this, and when you marinate it in that orange for several hours, it ends up being really, really juicy, but adding like the tiniest amount of sweetness to the outside of it too. It is really such a delicious flavor, and it's perfect for summertime. Here is how dinner turned out. The skin was just beautiful, and like I said, it has that tiniest hint of sweetness. I served it with the cucumbers and then a baked potato for everyone. You will see as we start to get into the summer months how my meals progress and how they really are so simple. I try to spend as much time with my kids outside, and meals become very minimal and ones that we can really just do right outside with us on the grill. For our last meal in today's video, I am doing beef enchiladas. These are Very basic, they don't need very much explanation at all, but I am starting with browning some ground beef in a skillet on the stove, and then I will drain the grease once it's cooked through. After the meat was cooked through and I drained the grease, I added a can of black beans and then about a tablespoon of taco seasoning. You can pretty much do any kind of seasoning you're wanting. Cumin is great, chili seasoning, salt, pepper, anything like that. And then I'm adding a can of mild green chilies, just a small can. I'm mixing them together. And then I'm going to do a scoop or two of this filling into each enchilada. For the longest time, I used the flour tortillas to make enchiladas with. And I'm not really sure why I did that, but I ended up, I don't know, a couple months ago starting to use corn tortillas, and the flavor is so much better. And then I even had people commenting like, yes, corn tortillas are so much better. So I appreciate your guys with that because it is so much of a better flavor. So that is what I'm using. I'm using small corn tortillas. I'm filling them with a scoop or two of the filling and then rolling them up and putting them into the pan. I did put, before I put any of the enchiladas down, I did do a pretty hefty amount of the red enchilada sauce. I'm sure you could use green if that is your thing, but we really like the red around here. I do like green too, but I favor the red. So we have red enchilada sauce at the bottom. I will roll them all up and then I'll pour more enchilada sauce over the top and top it with cheese before I bake it. You can top with any kind of cheese. I usually use cheddar and mozzarella because that's usually what I have on hand, and that's what I'm doing here. I did a little bit of cheddar and a little bit of mozzarella. Here's what they looked like before I put them into the oven. And I did have some extra for this recipe too of the filling and the tortillas. So I did go ahead and put more together and freeze that. Now I put it in this pan because I didn't have any freezer pans. So I lined it with parchment paper. I put them in there and I didn't do any of the sauce. I'll just reserve some for later. And then whenever I go to pull these out of the freezer, I can then pour the sauce over top. But I put it in this parchment paper and froze it like this. Once they're frozen, then I can take them out and put them in a freezer bag or something else that I have that can go in the freezer. And then, like I said, I will then have the sauce that I can at a later time put on whenever I go to bake it. While those are baking in the oven, I decided to make some rice to go on the side. This is the pretty normal rice that I make on my channel quite often. It's very, very normal. I start by a little bit of olive oil in a pan. I'll pour the rice in and kind of let them cook a little bit before I add any water or any other ingredients in. So now that it's cooked and kind of browned a little bit, I'm adding some of this Cajun seasoning. I'll add in a beef bouillon cube and then water. And because we were having enchiladas with this rice, I decided to also add some cilantro. If you have limes, you can squeeze some lime juice in it. That is really good as well. But I put the lid on and I let them go for about 15 minutes before I took the lid off to fluff the rice up. Here's how the rice turned out, and here's how the enchiladas turned out. This is another very cheap and easy meal to throw together on a busy weeknight. It is one of my family's favorite meals to have, and I like to make it because it is so quick and easy. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me during another week of meals video. I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.